Good morning, everyone. If you would, grab a Bible, and let's turn to Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Ecclesiastes 11. We'll be spending our time this morning in this part of the Bible, book of Ecclesiastes, and it will help you to have your Bible open to that place. So good to see you and to be with you this morning. Appreciate those who have led us in worship. Appreciate you singing and participating as all of us together have joined our voices to praise our God. Just want to remind you of who we are and what we do, that this is a group of people who are united by one thing, which is our faith in Jesus as Lord and our desire to serve Him. And so we rejoice that we can gather together without fear today, and we can worship our God. We rejoice that we can have people among us who are visiting, and we want you to know that we're glad that you're here. And we rejoice that we have hope that gives us reason to sing, faith that gives us reason to sing. And as we study God's Word, that we'll have truth from God that helps settle our minds and souls as we deal with life under the sun. Ecclesiastes 11, beginning in verse 7. The text reads, Ecclesiastes 7, verse 11, "Light is sweet, and it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart and put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, and the years draw near of which you say, I have no pleasure in them." For our time this morning, I'm going to ask you to dive with me into the mood of Ecclesiastes. If you've never studied this fascinating book before, you may be in for a bit of a surprise. It's a little bit different than other things you read in the Bible. It is a book that challenges us to think deeply about the things in life that are worthwhile. How can we find something that is meaningful on earth? And the character who calls himself the preacher, who is probably Solomon, tries to discover what's meaningful in his world and in his life. And he does that by going on a search for meaning in all different kinds of places. That is, he searches and observes, and he tries different things, trying to find what is real, what is good. And his conclusion at the beginning and the end of the book is sort of bleak, which is vanity of vanities, all is vanity. It's all worthless. He also tries really hard to limit his perspective to what he calls life under the sun, what it is to live this life just as a human being, really not thinking that much about God, really not thinking about the spiritual realm and spiritual things except on occasion. And he comes to the conclusion that that kind of life is really dark. Sometimes that vanity is because he sees the cyclical nature of life. He sees that just like the water cycle where rain falls and it trails off and evaporates and it goes over and over again, life is just like a circle all over and over again. The same ideas emerge generation after generation. There's nothing new, he says, under the sun. Or maybe it's that all the things that give us pleasure and joy in life are so fleeting, whether he's talking about becoming famous or whether he's talking about the buzz of alcohol. You have a momentary pleasure and then it goes away, and what do you really have? What's it worth? It's worthwhile, it's vanity. But really, what makes Solomon conclude that grim way is about the ugly reality of death that just hovers over everything. Death makes life vain. It makes everything fleeting. I make all this money, but then when I die, it goes right back in the box. I build things, I build great things, and then I hand them off to somebody, and who knows whether he's wise or a fool. I wonder when he says that, by the way, if he's got a sidelong look at Rehoboam, who is going to immediately tear up the kingdom Solomon spent his lifetime building. But it makes it all vanity. What am I doing all this for? Why am I making this money? Why am I doing this work? And the mood here in Ecclesiastes is that too often we spend our time and our energy and our best moments building things that don't matter, given the fact that we're soon to die. And when we die, nobody's going to care. how much money we made, or how funny we were, or how famous we were, or how much fun we had. It's all worthless because we'll be dead. And yet, as gloomy as Ecclesiastes can be, I also find it extremely practical. Because when you start to think about your life that way, it creates a certain mood in you. I want you to look with me at what he says in verse 8. He says, "So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all, but let him remember that the days of darkness will be many." So you've got that kind of idea. Yeah, rejoice, but remember, don't forget, there's going to be hardness coming. Chapter 12 and verse 1, "Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come, and the years draw near of which you say, I have no pleasure in them." So you get this sort of hard-edged, two-sided wisdom. You know, if life is vain and you only have a short amount of time before you die, then get busy doing what's important. Do it now. Why do you wait? What's the goal? What good does waiting do us? And I want us to think about that message for a few minutes. A reminder that there are important things in life that we need to attend to before what he calls the difficult days come. Especially, this passage that we've just read is addressed to young people. It says in chapter 11 and verse 9, "Rejoice, O young man." And then in 12:1, "Remember your Creator in the days of your youth, before the difficult days come." So it seems like a downer to young people. I know probably nobody who's young is excited about what I've been saying so far this morning. I get that. And yet it's a message that we need, because it is a message addressed to that mentality that says, I can wait to do what matters. And Solomon says, do what's important now, because it won't be easier later. It will be harder. Difficult days will come. So I mentioned that Solomon's bleak perspective turns out to be kind of surprisingly practical. I want to show you that for a second. I want you to kind of get into his mood, and then we'll start thinking about what this might mean. Go back with me a page to chapter 9, Ecclesiastes 9. I told you this would be practical, so listen to Ecclesiastes 9 and verse 9. "Enjoy life with a wife whom you love, all the days of your vain life that he has given you under the sun, because that is your portion in life, and in your toil at which you toil under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol to which you are going." So he says, enjoy your life. Enjoy every day you're given. Take pleasure in the small joys of life. Rejoice with the wife of your youth. That's your portion, he says. That's your gift from God. But, verse 10, "Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol." Get busy, because the time comes when your work ends and it's all over. Now, I hope you hear, when he talks about Sheol, the grave to which you're going, the realm of the dead, Solomon doesn't have a very clear view of the afterlife. He doesn't know what we know about eternal life. He doesn't know what we know about Jesus' atoning death. He doesn't know what we know after death. All he sees is life under the sun, and guess what? It has an end. So get busy. Do what's important now. And then he wants to address the idea that we often think we can wait. Look in chapter 11 and verse 1. I want to read this with you. I want you to see how he is saying there is a danger in waiting. Chapter 11 and verse 1, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. Give a portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what disaster may happen on the earth. If the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves on the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or to the north, in the place where the tree falls, there it will lie. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. As you do not know the way the Spirit comes into the bones in the womb of a woman with child, so you do not know the work of God who makes everything. In the morning sow your seed, and at evening withhold not your hand, for you do not know which will prosper, this or that, or whether both alike will be good." So in this section, he talks about how there are some things that we just don't know. Because we're finite human beings, we don't know. So he says in verse 2, you do not know what disaster may happen on the earth. He says in verse 5, you do not know all these things about the way the Spirit comes into the bones of a womb of a woman with child, and you do not know the work of God. And in verse 6, you do not know which will prosper. We have a lot we don't know. So how should we respond to that? To the fact that we are finite human beings in a world full of big forces. Well, he says, get busy doing something. Just try something. Verse 1, he says, cast your bread on the waters. Verse 2, he says, give a portion to 7 or even to 8. He says, get to work, do something. Verse 6, he says, sow your seed in the morning and in the evening. He says, just do something. Just try. Just live. Take care of the things that are important and do them now. Especially, I want you to notice verse 4. Verse 4. He who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. This is the idea that we're waiting for the perfect time. The perfect time to sow our seed and the perfect time to reap the crop. Oh, no, it's a little rainy today. Look at that cloud. Oh, I'm not sure. Let's just wait. And what happens? You wait and you wait and you wait, and the perfect time never appears. You don't end up sowing ever, and you don't end up reaping as a result. He says that's foolishness. At some point, we just have to try. We just have to do what's important. Don't waste your time. And so this is the context in which we find our text. There is urgency because of death, and there is urgency because of our tendency to wait for better times. Surely there will be a time, sometime in the nebulous future, I'll have time to figure all this out. I'll have time to remember my Creator. I'll have time to do the things that really matter. But not today. Not quite yet. I'm not sure I'm ready for that yet. And Solomon applies that same logic to youth. Look in verse 7 now. Ecclesiastes 11 and verse 7. He says, light is sweet and it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all. But let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and the sight of your eyes. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. Remove vexation from your heart. Put away pain from your body, for youth and the dawn of life are vanity. So Solomon says there are good things in life, and he says you need to enjoy them now. Rejoice. Verse 8, rejoice. Rejoice in your youth. Verse 9, rejoice. There's a saying that youth is wasted on the young. And the idea there, of course, is young people don't have enough wisdom to recognize what a blessing it is that they're young. And by the time they do, they're not young anymore. Youth is wasted on the young. Solomon is saying, consciously rejoice in the good times you have. Know that it's good and rejoice. In fact, let your heart cheer you. Don't be cynical, he says in verse 10. Remove vexation from your heart. Let this be a time of joy. And yet, know that God will bring you into judgment. Chapter 12 and verse 1. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near which you say, I have no pleasure in them. Remember your Creator now. Do what's important now. Remember that you have obligations to things and people outside yourself. You have a Creator. Remember your Creator now, because even for young people, there is urgency. I want to point out that that is the opposite of the advice we seem to give to young people most of the time. The advice that I have heard, at least maybe not in clearer terms as this, is, hey man, live it up while you can, and then later on you can settle down. You do whatever you want now, and then someday you'll get serious. And Solomon says, enjoy your life now, but be serious now. Remember your Creator now, because it will be harder later. Solomon doesn't want young people sitting around waiting for life to start. You know, someday I'll get going and I'll get my act together. Rejoice and remember your Creator. He is also not advocating a sterile, joyless youth. He wants us to feel joy and not vexation. But he is saying, remember your Creator now, or you may regret it. So just like what we read back in chapter 11 and verse 4, that sometimes we wait for the perfect time, so we can live our lives that way, where we wait for the perfect time, always waiting, maybe later, to seek God and to make changes in our lives and to get serious about spiritual things. And we find that either that good time never comes or that we live long periods of difficult days crippled with regret. We always think there will be more time. But have you considered that if you do have more time, it may be much, much harder? I want you to think about this picture with me for a few moments. To remember your Creator now before the difficult days come. Let's read beginning in verse 1 of chapter 12. Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened, and the clouds return after the rain. In the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look through the windows are dimmed, and the doors on the street are shut, when the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of a bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low. They are afraid also of what is high, and terrors are in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails, because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. Before the silver cord has snapped, or the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern, and the dust returns to the earth as it was, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. I want to break down a little bit what he talks about when he says the difficult days here. He says in chapter 12 and verse 1, the years draw near which you say, I have no pleasure in them. Solomon warns that if we are blessed to continue to live, there will be days that are hard, when we will no longer have the same kind of pleasure we did. I have no pleasure in them. Days where we no longer look forward to the next day, where we're not excited about life. Days where our heart does not cheer us. As we age, we experience more and more of the disappointments and tragedies of life. Life gets harder. People let us down. We let ourselves down. There are forces outside ourselves that make circumstances unpleasant. And sometimes, over time, the spark of life within us just sort of fades. The difficult days he describes as the light is darkened. Look in verse 2. Before the sun and the light and the moon and the stars are darkened. Now, he had mentioned this back in 11 and 7, where he said, light is sweet and it's pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. You know, there was a time where this was all going well, but now he says the light is darkened. I think it's pretty clear, I hope you do too. Solomon is not saying, remember your Creator now before the sun burns out. Yeah, that's not the idea. It's not being literal. What he's saying is, there are going to be times where your perspective will be so different that it will be as if there is no more light or joy. It's about the effects of age and hardship on our outlook. The time will come when we're not so energetic, and we're not so optimistic, and we're not so excited. The difficult days. The difficult days are the time when the storms keep coming back. In verse 2, it says, the clouds return after the rain. I think you can hear exactly where we're going with that. The trouble just keeps coming. If we're blessed to make it to older age, trouble may not leave. Problem after problem may pile up on us. Sometimes our plans are interrupted. Sometimes our plans are completely ruined. The body begins to break down. Verses 3 and 4, I think, go together, and I want you to read them with me. They are, by most people, assumed to be pictures of the breakdown of the body. And so I want to try to make some sense of that. Verse 3, in the day when the keepers of the house tremble, and the strong men are bent, and the grinders cease because they are few, and those who look out from through the windows are dimmed, and the doors on the street are shut, when the sound of the grinding is low, and one rises up at the sound of the bird, and all the daughters of song are brought low, they are afraid. I'm sorry, that's all I want, is through verse 4. These pictures are so odd that scholars almost all agree that this is a metaphorical description about the breakdown of the body as we age. So I want you to think about, if we are blessed to make it to older age, he is saying it's going to get harder. Things are going to be difficult. Our bodies are not always going to be what they were when we were young. So you have these pictures, and I'm going to do the best I can. Verse 3 talks about the keepers of the house tremble, the strong men are bent. Most people say the keepers of the house are the arms and the strong men are the legs. But just think about that. We're shaking and we're bent over. Those who look through the window, the grinders cease because they are few. Most associate that with the teeth. And those who look through the windows are dimmed. The eyesight begins to fade. Verse 4, the doors on the street are shut. It's talking about the ears. And then that strange occasion where some things are really hard to hear, and then some things, the quietest noise wakes us up in the night. Both of those happen at once. I want you to think about what we see all around us when we see people who are aging. We see a harder kind of life. It's just more challenging. Doing the simple things of life, hearing, seeing, walking, standing, become a challenge. And the question is, do you think it'll be easier to remember your Creator then? Think it'll be easier to turn your life around then? Think it'll be easier to make better choices then? Solomon says, no, it's going to be harder then. Everything is harder. Not all of these things happen to people as they age, but you get the idea. The idea is that there comes a time in the natural course of life when man becomes a shell of himself. And those are times that are difficult because the body is breaking down. And the spirit weakens. It says in verse 5, they're afraid also of what is high, and terrors in the way. The almond tree blossoms, the grasshopper drags itself along, and desire fails because man is going to his eternal home, and the mourners go about the streets. All kinds of identifications here. Some people see a fear of heights and a general fear of other people. Sometimes as we age, it's easier just to stay in than it is to go out and do anything. And so we become not what we once were. People made a lot of different applications of the almond tree and the grasshopper. I'll spare you a lot of that. The main thrust is desire fails. That's the words in verse 5. Desire fails. We start to lose our spunk. And why? He says it's because man is going to his eternal home. It's because we all know the body is breaking down. The spirit is beginning to fade. Death is approaching. And then death comes. Verse 6. Before the silver cord is snapped, and the golden bowl is broken, or the pitcher is shattered at the fountain, or the wheel broken at the cistern. A lot of things happening here. I think the main images are a cord holding a bowl, and the cord is broken, the bowl falls and smashes. Or you've got a cistern, which is like a well, where you have some kind of pulley system, and the cord snaps, and the thing smashes, and the wheel breaks. Everything is just broken. What once worked is no more. And the dust returns to the earth, and the spirit to God who gave it. So if we are blessed with time, Solomon says that's where we're headed. And the message is, remember your Creator now before the difficult days come. That's the message. It will never be easier than right now to honor your God, to straighten out your life, to commit yourself to doing right. Now is the time. If you're blessed with more time, Solomon says, it won't get easier, it will get harder. So do it now. I will add a little bit of my experience on this. I cannot speak about some of these things about age, but I've had a number of times when people in middle age or even old age have decided that they wanted to get their lives right with God now. They had, in their younger years, neglected their Creator. They had lived in a way that was hurtful of other people, and they had some work to do. Now, that can happen. People can turn their lives around at any point, and that is a beautiful thing. I don't want anything I'm saying or Solomon's saying to discourage you if that's you today or if that's you at some point in the future. But I will tell you, the people that I have worked with in that position have so much to come back from. It is hard for them. They have to undo years of neglect. They often have terrible habits that are deeply ingrained over long periods of time. They live with the consequences of their foolish choices. A lot of them have relationships that they cannot fix. And above all of that, they live with this just staggering level of regret. If you're in that boat, I'm not discouraging you, but I think you'd agree with me if you're in that boat. It would have been better if I had remembered my Creator earlier, if I hadn't waited. So now is the time to do what you can do. Now is the time to remember your Creator. Now is the time to seek the truth about yourself and about God and about your destiny. Now is the time to face what you have done and ask forgiveness for those things. Now is the time. It will only be harder later if there is a later. So remember your Creator. I think that means a couple of things, by the way. I think it means first that I have a Creator. I don't belong to myself. I didn't create myself. I'm here because of other people and especially because of God. And therefore I have some obligations, both to other people and to God, that I need to recognize and live up to. It also means that I will die. And that just permeates this text. Isn't it amazing that the one universal fact about human existence is the one thing we don't ever like to talk about? Boy, I really don't want to think about how I might die, even though it's certain it's going to happen to me if Jesus doesn't return first. Think about that. We are in such denial about that, and yet it can help us so much to clarify what matters about our lives. Because there is no clarity like the clarity you get when you see someone you love die, or you go to someone's funeral and you remember this is what matters. This is where we're headed. Remember your Creator in the days of your youth. Remember that you have a Creator. Remember that you will die. And remember that God will bring you into judgment. That is also throughout this text. It's here in chapter 11 and verse 9. For all these things, God will bring you into judgment. It's at chapter 12 and verse 14. God will bring every deed into judgment, including every secret thing, whether it's good or evil. I will be judged by my Creator, and so will you. The things that we do are eternal. When we do something, it doesn't just go away. I think we know that when we talk about other people, by the way. We don't say, well, yeah, Hitler did some wrong things, but he just needed to grow out of them. That's not what we say, is it? No, he deserves to be punished because the things he did are forever evil. What about my evil? Do I just get to grow out of it? Just move forward? No, it's forever evil. Something must happen. There must be judgment. It is only when I recognize judgment that I know I need Jesus to intervene in my judgment. It is only when I recognize that I truly remember my Creator. So I want to urge you, now is the time to give your life to the Creator. But I don't want to leave the lesson there, because I think Solomon's perspective is a little uninformed about some deeper realities that we now know as Christians. His view of old age and death is incomplete. And I believe, I mentioned this earlier, that Solomon tries to write by sort of eliminating God from the equation. What does life under the sun look like? And in doing so, he also reveals that he has no view of what the afterlife is and no knowledge, as we would expect, of Jesus' atoning death and eternal life. So I want to show you what someone who does have that knowledge says about older age. Now, in 2 Corinthians 4, this passage that I put on the board, the passage that Marshall read for us earlier, when he talks about our outer self wasting away, Paul's actually talking about persecution and how he and the apostles are being persecuted for their faith. But you can see this same principle applies no matter what's happening to our outer body. He says, so we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day. For this light, momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison, as we look not to the things that are seen, but to the things that are unseen. He says, yes, our body is breaking down. Think about that. Everything we've read and talked about in chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes. Now he says, yes, our outer self is wasting away. But that's not the whole story. See, our inner self is growing stronger every day. And so two things are happening at the same time, right? The body is weakening and the spirit is strengthening. Yes, I am dying. But that's not the whole story. And so he says, in fact, this affliction, what we're suffering right now in our body, is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. That there's no comparison between what we experience as we suffer in the earthly realm and what we will someday enjoy in the presence of our God. No comparison. I don't know about you, but that's a lot better message than we're just going to die. And so I am thankful to God that he has revealed to us that we live where we live when we live, and we know that Jesus died to atone for our sins and to give us hope of eternal life. So that, yes, our bodies are going to break down and die. Yes, difficult days may come if we're blessed to continue to live, but that's not the end. Even when we die, that's not the end. Paul writes, this is near the end of his life in 2 Timothy 4, "For I am already being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Henceforth there is laid up for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me," that's not away, "will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." Paul doesn't approach death in weakness and terror. He approaches death with confidence, with boldness. He says, I know. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. And I know there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness. And not just for me, but for everybody who's loved his appearing. Paul says, I know what Jesus has done for me, and I know where I'm headed. So can I say something to those in our audience who are older? I want you to know that your life does not have to be what Ecclesiastes described as a bleak, desperate giving up of life. I want you to know that this kind of boldness, this kind of confidence is possible. That you can live in a different way that gives encouragement and hope to those of us who are younger. I want you to know, and I mean what I'm about to say, I appreciate so deeply the fact that we have older people among us who, after all the years and all the disappointments and all the physical pains, are still here, still serving the Lord. I want you to know it's meaningful to me where I sit and I begin to suffer those things and I begin to see that pain and say, somebody's up ahead of me on the path. I want you to know that your example in that is awesome, and we need you. So please, don't just see the gloom of Solomon. See the confidence and the boldness of Paul, and know that we appreciate you and your example for us. And someday, if the Lord wills, I hope to be right where you are. I hope to be just a few steps from the reward that we're all seeking, the one that Paul talked about. So please, don't lose heart. Keep leading us in that way and showing us that even in the difficult days, we can still serve the Lord. So the message is do what's important now. And my question to you is, are there questions that you need to answer? Is there a lifestyle that you need to change? Is there something that you need to get rid of in your life? Is there a confession of faith that you need to make? That it's time for me to admit, I'm ready to believe in Jesus. I'm ready to follow him. I'm ready to give up what needs to be given up and do his will. Whatever the need is there, I don't know what it is for each one of you, but whatever it is, the challenge is do what's important now. Before harder times come, don't wait for perfect times. Let's obey God and remember our Creator wherever we are.